Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Communications and Conversations. I am the magical tour bus host here, the old creepy guy from the Great America commercials. Yes, that is me, your host, John Crook. A face for radio and a voice for newsprint, as they've said. Those are only my highest fans that are going ahead and saying that. We are back. We've been off for a vacation a little bit, sloughing off, whatever you want to go ahead and call out there. Sitting on the porch, having an adult liquid comedy beverage, having a cigar or two. Show season started up, so it's getting busy, and of course, well, we wouldn't be remiss if we didn't go ahead and say that we are also involved in other activities besides radio. I actually do have a family life that's, I know, kind of amazing on there. But we are back today. We are back with an interesting show. And the reason that I'm saying it's an interesting show is because we're going to talk about repeaters. That's right, repeaters. And we're going to talk about repeaters largely based on the fact that I actually had someone call and say, John, can you talk a little bit about repeaters? Because, you know, it seems like the whole world forgot what a repeater was. And I kind of have to agree with that. At least on the hobby side of things, right? We amateur radio, they've used repeaters for many years. And that used to be the craze, right? It used to be repeaters. And then we kind of started to shift in this digital era. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, repeaters kind of started to die off. And I also have to say, you know, well, let's back it up. We're going to talk about repeaters in general. We're not going to be specifically talking about one brand, because I heard there was another YouTuber, we'll put it that way, that on his show, he just does the likes and kisses up to the manufacturers. Let's put it that way. And he went along and he had someone who's making repeater controllers. And the person who had that said that repeaters are dying. And that is not correct. It's a very, very fine view of it. Repeaters are still in use. There's a lot of repeaters that are actually still out there. And I actually believe that repeaters are starting to make a comeback, but in a different sense, in a different way. And we're going to explain that here on today's episode here, a little bit on there. So let's buckle in for that today. But before we continue on with our show here, we need to go ahead and thank our sponsor, JJK Communications. That's right, JJK Communications is your connection to quality communications. They deal with sales, service, consulting, support, you name it. JJK Communications can help you on there. And JJK Communications is not just, hey, we want to make a sale and then move on and do that kind of thing. No, they want to stay with you after the sale. They want to be able to help you. They want to help you design systems. They work to build specialty systems. You're going to have other companies that are going to come in and you're going to say, hey, I want to buy a radio and stuff like that. They're going to try to sell you the biggest, the best, and that kind of thing. And then, boom, when you're done, if you got a problem with it, come back, talk to their service department, but they're going to charge you through an arm and a leg on there. JJK Communications doesn't want to do that. They want to be able to go ahead and help you make the most out of your communication needs. Not only that, do they show that, but they also have their two great communication systems. They have the JJK Connect system and the JJK Elite system. So whether you need communications for your family and your friends or business or whatever the case may be, those two systems can help. The JJK Connect is their two-way radio system based out of Western Wisconsin and Northwest Wisconsin that goes also into the Twin Cities, Minnesota area. You need coverage beyond that area? Don't worry, they can help you with their JJK Elite system. That is their LTE two-way radio system. They're not going to go ahead and just sell you a radio and saying, oh, great, this is this and da-da-da-da-da. No. They don't want to go ahead and do that with other rapid services or POC services. No, JJK Elite system is a premier system that is designed to work whether you're using it for personal, business, blow-off communications, whatever the case may you want to be. JJK Communications help with that. In addition, check out their JJK Connect X and JJK Elite X systems that allow users to use their RF radio networks in a local area on their system, and then also be able to communicate at the same time people hundreds and thousands of miles away. Those other push-to-talk radio services don't have that ability, but with JJK Communications, you do. Go on over to their website, www.jjkcom.com, and see what they have to offer, or give them a call today. All righty. Well, as we said, today's topic is going to be about repeaters. And repeaters are quite an interesting thing on there. But a lot of people don't understand how they work. Maybe some might understand by programming them, but for the most part, they are kind of unique in what they do and how they operate. Now, for clarification and to help people understand what the type of show we're doing today, we are going to be talking about conventional repeaters. Now, this could be digital voice or analog voice, so FM repeaters or digital repeaters, but we're talking about it in the conventional sense of non-trunking, non-networked system type repeaters, standalone repeaters. Because as you'll see from today's episode, there's more to what people realize, which would fall into the term of repeaters, and a lot are being used in those regards today. So before we get out, I guess the best thing we got to do is, what is a repeater? Why would you do or use a repeater over simplex communication? So at the bottom of our screen here, okay, it's right over here, this line right here, we are going to talk about simplex. Simplex is using one frequency and uses a concept of push to talk, release to listen. What that means is you're going to take your radio, push the PTT button, and then you're going to speak. But in order to receive, you have to let go of that button, and you're receiving on the same frequency. So it's one frequency in use, and it's push to talk, release to listen. Now, do repeaters act the same way, push to talk, release to listen? Yes, but with simplex, you have one frequency only. Now, what is a drawback to simplex? Well, drawback to simplex is that if you don't have a radio powerful enough, like let's say you have a handheld radio, and handheld radios are only going to go so far. Mobile radios will go further. So let's say you have a handheld radio, and you're trying to reach someone maybe a half to a mile away. Oh, okay, a simplex radio might be able to do that. Or maybe you're trying to talk a mobile to mobile. Maybe they're a couple miles away. Yeah, a mobile radio would be able to do that. But do you think that you would be able to take your handheld radio and talk to another handheld radio 10 miles away? No, it's not going to happen directly. But with the repeater, it can. Let's say you are talking mobile to mobile and you're trying to talk to another mobile 30 miles away. Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But with a repeater, that can happen. So if you look at the top now, if we go up there, the top part of the screen up there, you're going to go ahead and now see with that top part of the screen there, how a repeater works. And a repeater uses, in essence, two frequencies. They use a transmit frequency and they use a receive frequency. Now, what ends up happening in the way that a repeater is designed is that you take and you transmit with your radio on the frequency that the repeater receives on. While that repeater is receiving, it is simultaneously kicking up the power, so increasing the power, and then transmitting it out simultaneously on a different frequency. So you go in, let's say on frequency A to the repeater, and then the repeater hears it, and then they transmit it on frequency B. Now, what's the advantage of a repeater? Well, the advantage of the repeater is kind of what the drawback to simplex is, which is I have a 5-watt handheld radio, and I need to talk to someone 20 miles away. Well, I can't go from my radio to that other person's radio directly 20 miles away. But with a repeater, now what I can do is I can go in and boom, go in on frequency A, and that repeater hears it because repeaters need to be mounted in a high spot. The antennas need to be high to hear the best, right? And what's going to do is it's going to receive my signal, and then by boosting up the power and putting it out on a different frequency, it's now extending the range of it. If you almost want to think of a repeater, think of it as two separate radios here, which we'll cover in a minute here. One is just listening, the other is talking. Now, it kind of makes sense. Like, well, let's just go to the next screen here. Let's go to the next diagram. But that's the advantage of a repeater, is you have the repeater up on a high spot, you can transmit and receive at the same time, meaning I'm talking and that other person is receiving my transmission at the same time. Same on simplex, yes, but once again, you have that increased range because of it. Now, here's how a repeater works. So let's go ahead and start at the antenna, right? It all starts with the antenna. So it comes down from the antenna. It goes in through the coax cable to a duplexer. And I'll explain what a duplexer is in a minute, but just know that then the receiver signal, that one frequency, is going to come in and it's going to go to the receiver. Now it's going to go down and go into the controller. And then it's going to go to that transmitter. And then that transmitter is going to go up back into the duplexer and go out. Now, in essence, the receiver and the transmitter are two separate radios. One's function is to receive. One's function is to transmit. Now, I know that sounds like really stupid. Like, John, why are you doing that? Because it's not like a mobile radio. So a mobile radio or a handheld radio, it either transmits or receives, right? It's not necessarily doing it at the same time. Crossbanding is a little different, but we're not going to talk about that. So what's happening then in this case is that the receiver is receiving, and that's all it does. It just is tuned to receive. And then the transmitter is just tuned to transmit, gets the most effective transmitter. Now, what is this controller thing here, right? Like in the middle, it says controller. Well, the controller is a device. Now, it could be internal of the repeater. It can be external. It doesn't matter. Just know that there's a controller. Well, what is the function? Take this overall concept and think of the receiver as a person, and think of the transmitter as a person. And now what's happening is that the receiver is talking into the ear of the controller, and the controller is then talking to the transmitter. Or better yet, a good example controller, and I'm going to date myself on here, so that's why I was kind of hesitant on using this example, is think of the old days of the telephone, way, way, way back of the telephone, where you used to have telephone operators. What they would do is they'd be listening, they would take your call, and then they put the wire into another call center so you can actually connect and make the telephone calls, okay? That's what a controller is. It passes that audio through it. Now, here's the deal, though, with the controller. The controller is sort of a boss man, let's say. Because now what's happening with that controller is it's looking, the signal's coming in on the receiver, the controller is saying, okay, wait a minute. Am I supposed to be passing your audio? Because let's say a repeater has tone signaling on it. And that tone signaling means, hey, I'm only going to listen, or I only want to listen to transmissions that have a certain specific value or number or setting, right? Okay, cool. That's what the controller does. The controller says, that doesn't sound like a signal I need to repeat. I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to repeat it. Oh, wait, that's the correct signal that I need to see. And controllers can be set up for numerous things. We could easily do a whole show on controllers. That's how in depth that controllers are. But then it passes that audio on there. Now, usually at that controller is where we also insert commands and functions. So sometimes you can send codes or commands to a controller, and the controller can do certain things. So the controller could turn off the receiver, so stop listening to the receiver. It could turn off the transmitter. It could change frequencies. It could change power levels. It could, you name it. It can do those things. So that's what a controller does. Very important. Now, can you, in essence, wire a receiver directly to a transmitter and still work? Yes, you can. But when you do that, you lose a lot of functionality. You do certain things on there. So, like, repeaters need to ID by FCC rules and regulations. So that controller usually incorporates that into there. So you don't have that controller. You don't really have a boss. Let's call it a boss for sake of a better term. So controllers are important. You can get sophisticated controllers. There are controllers out there that will allow you to read announcements, make emergency messages, connect to other controllers, connect to the internet, all these kind of things like that. So controllers really do a lot. Back in the day, it would pass that audio and those kind of signals through all of that on there. Now, let's talk about this duplexer thing. What is this duplexer thing on there? Okay, so a duplexer is duplex, two in essence on there, dupe. And what it does is it basically is a filter for the antenna system. So the antenna comes in, right? Because a repeater transmits and receives at the same time, right? If you connected both the receiver and the transmitter to the antenna, guess what's going to happen? You're going to possibly have that transmitter power spill into that receiver. And if it spills into that receiver, it's either going to make the receiver deaf, make the receiver not work, it could even blow out the receiver to completely on there. So what a duplexer does is it takes that signal in and it says, okay, I as a duplexer am only handling two frequencies in this case. I'm handling one that's going to be receive, and I'm going to handle one that's going to be transmit. And then people who program, or not program, but tune duplexers, they know how to do this and everything. But what it does, and I've done it too, I've tuned many duplexers. So when that receive signal's coming in, the duplexer says, okay, transmit side, you're going to ignore this frequency. So it's going to pass it directly over to the receiver. It's not going to hit it to the transmitter. It's going to go in and it's going to go to the receiver. Now, the duplexer on the flip side of the coin is going to say, oh, transmitter, you're having energy, you're having signal come in that you're going to send up the antenna. Great. But, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to stop it so you can't go to the receiver. So that, in essence, that antenna is coming in. The duplexer says, oh, receiver traffic, go this way and only this way. It's kind of like a crossing guard, okay, or a traffic direction cop. Or, hey, I got a transmitter. Yeah, you're going to go straight up the antenna. You're not going to go anywhere else. And duplexers could be expensive. We could dedicate a whole episode to duplex, and maybe we will after this one. Who knows? Okay. But that is the breakdown of how repeater infrastructure works. So if we take a look once again at a standard repeater, okay, a little bit of a difference here. Now we see we're going to have a transmit frequency and we're going to have that receive frequency. Now what you do in the radios is you have to program the radios that all of them receive the same frequency and all of them transmit on the same frequency. Because what's happening is that the two radios in the picture here, so the one right above my head and the one over there, right, they're designed that they sit and listen, in this case here, like 152 megahertz. They're sitting and listening. The minute they push the push-to-talk button, it stops using frequency, in this case B, goes over to frequency A and transmits. When you release the button, it stops using frequency A for transmission, goes back to frequency B and sits and receives. So you have to program those into your radios. You have to set it up that way. It doesn't, so sometimes people think of the picture like it goes from the left radio to the tower and then the tower to the right radio and then the right radio to the tower and back to the left user. And people, and yes, that is there, but they think it uses like multiple frequencies, and that's not the case. It doesn't use the multiple frequencies. It just uses two frequencies on there. So that is a standard repeater aspect of things on there. Now, after I kind of said all that using different frequencies, let's talk about a different type of repeater, and that is mobile repeaters. Now, this is very common for law enforcement. Some firefighters use it. EMS uses it sometimes on there. And in essence, what's happening here is that their portable radio cannot hit the system directly. So what ends up happening in that case is that they then will take and use a mobile repeater. And what happens is that the handhelds talk to the squad car, the ambulance, the fire truck. Those that once the fire truck, ambulance, squad car, anything like that hear the traffic from the portable, it then sends it out to the tower system or to the dispatcher, whoever it needs to talk to. Okay, so mobile repeaters are different in that regards because usually it is a simplex frequency coming from the handheld to the car. And then the car could be transmitting on simplex also, or it could be transmitting into another repeater. So you could have the handheld go to the squad car then transmits out to the repeater, and blah, 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 blah. Kind of goes like that on there. For the signal coming in, obviously the signal is going to be broadcasted off the radio tower. The mobile, in this case, squad car, fire truck, ambulance, whatever, is going to hear that signal. And then it's actually going to even play the speaker through the audio inside the car. But then also, too, is there's going to be another, in essence, radio connected to that radio, which is then going to go and send it out and transmit out to those portables that do that. So that is what they sometimes call a mobile repeater. I've heard people call it a mobile extender. Couple different things, couple different ways. It's all up to you and how you want to call it. It's all just normal nomenclature. Now, after we talked about that, we're going to talk about crossband repeaters. Now, crossband repeaters are a little bit of a different thing. What they are is that there's two types. There's unidirectional, meaning one direction, or there's bidirectional, meaning goes either way. What is a unidirectional crossband repeater? Well, this in this case is this would be like transmitting into the repeater on UHF, but then receiving on VHF, or transmitting in on VHF and receiving on UHF. But notice it's only one frequency for receive, one frequency for transmit. It can't go back and forth. It's unidirectional. Now, why would you use this? Well, in the amateur community, I'm going to be honest with you, amateur community, you can kind of go ahead and use this as temporary setups. You don't need a duplexer, all righty? And the reason you don't need a duplexer is you need a diplexer, which takes both the antenna ports on the radio and then puts it to one antenna. So in this case, we have VHF and UHF. We would put the one side of the diplexer to the UHF, one side of the diplexer to the VHF, use a dual band antenna, and then that does all the filtering for you. You don't need to have a duplexer on it also. Once again, this is for crossband unidirectional repeating. Crossband unidirectional repeating. Understand that because of what's coming up next here. What's coming up here next is now we have bidirectional crossband repeating. Wow. How do we go from that, John? So what happens in bidirectional is that it could do one of two things. So it could be this, where you see a simplex frequency on UHF and a simplex frequency on VHF. And then what happens is you come in on VHF, you go out on UHF. And then if you come in on UHF, you go out on VHF for this bidirectional, as they call it there, crossband repeater. But what happened here is they made it a little bit more different. They made it a little more intense. So what they did is they put a receive and transmit per band. So in this case, instead of saying, UHF directly to VHF, you now have a repeater involved where the UHF can go to repeater and come out there on VHF, not a problem. You see this one here where it kind of has this split kind of thing on there so that you go in on VHF, come out on UHF, or go in on UHF and come out on VHF, but the frequencies are split. Now, this could be because of how the system needs to be. Maybe it could be two repeaters that are tied together. So you could have a full standalone UHF, full standalone VHF, and then still connect the two repeaters together. But why would you use something like this? Why would you do that? Because when I talk about crossband repeaters, people say that all the time. Well, a couple reasons. One, think of you're at an event or think of you're something that's going on and you only have UHF radios and the other person or the other group has only VHF radios. Well, guess what? When you're talking and dealing with this, now this allows the UHF users and the VHF users to talk and communicate with one another. Because normally a VHF portable and a UHF portable aren't going to talk to one another. Not usually. They're never going to talk to one another. But with this case is you have the UHF users go into a repeater. That is then broadcasted out to the other UHF users at the same time. Now you have this crossband repeater put in place. And now while the UHF is repeating itself out to the users, you have this other repeater, in essence, that is now connected. And then that could be broadcasting out to its users. So two separate groups of users that are joined together on different frequencies because of crossband repeating. So it does work, and it does work very well. I usually get to ask this. People are like, John, who uses crossband repeating? And I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of the amateurs do on there. That I think we have that whole mentality, that whole resource of saying, hey, we use crossband repeaters. And in this case, usually the UHF side is just a simplex frequency. And then the VHF side has in essence, well, let's just put it this way. You can go in on UHF, come out on VHF, and if someone talks back on VHF, they can come out on UHF. That's the easiest way to do it down there and everything. So these are the in essence, general aspects of a repeater. Now, there are certain kind of other repeaters I didn't talk about. So there is what they call simplex repeater. And a simplex repeater is what they kind of call a store and forward. those have kind of fallen out of favor. But what it is basically you would take this repeater, you key up the repeater, and the repeater's only going to have like a 30-second window you can talk. Very short-lived. Because I'm going to key up the radio, and I'm going to be like, hey, this is John. Does anybody copy? So I unkey. Then what ends up happening is after the time it takes to kind of record that message, over the whatever they have it set up, right? Like there, it's not going to go all over the place, but it's going to go as high as the antenna can do because it kind of acts like a base radio. But anyways, so there you have that, and then it's going to go out. But here's the part. It's a simplex. It's not using duplex, so it's not using one frequency in, one frequency out. It's using a simplex frequency in and that same simplex frequency out. But with this store and forward or simplex, what it's doing is recording my voice. So it's kind of weird because I'll key up and I'll be like, hey, van 1 to van 2, do you go ahead and copy? I unkey, and then I would hear, hey, van 1 to van 2, do you go ahead and copy? So that's how it works. So it's kind of weird because normally with the repeater, if I key up and I talk on a repeater, the minute I let go, that conversation is done on the other end because it doesn't record or anything. So then Julia can go ahead and then start talking right away, in essence, when the video is or the transmission is done and however it's set up on those kind of things like that on there. I said video because there is a couple good videos out there of simplex repeaters, and I would just strongly suggest going ahead and taking a look at those kind of things on there for those repeaters. Much better than I can do, and I don't even have any equipment to make a store and forward repeater. So, alrighty, that is it for the diagrams and kind of the understanding of repeaters. And it now comes to that time in the show here, if I can talk today even, is, you know what really bends my antenna? You know what really bends my antenna is that the decency and civility of repeater usage has gone out the window. It really has. It's really kind of gone out the window. I made reference to the show at the beginning of the show that there's devices out there that you can go and get now that make repeaters in the little spots they're home here, and I kind of show here one here that I got here, and this is just a small little one. It's on a Raspberry Pi on there, but that is a device that allows you to make your own little repeater. I think the problem is that people don't want to use repeaters anymore for a couple of reasons. There's a cost to infrastructure. There is. And now I'm talking about everything. I'm not just talking about amateur. I'm talking about things in general. So the cost of a repeater is there. You have to have the antenna, you have to have the coax, you have to have the repeater, and then, depending, you may even have to pay rent on the tower. Okay? You may have to. I don't know if you're going to have to or not. Some people may live rent-free, whatever your situation and case may be. But there's cost to that. Antennas could be $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, even up to $1,000 for an antenna. Coax? Yeah, if you use good high-quality coax running down your 100-foot tower or more than a 100-foot tower, you could easily be paying almost $2, $3, $4, $5 a foot. So if it's a standard 100, well, even go 200. Let's say it's a 200-foot tall repeater or a repeater site on there. Well, $3 a foot, $3 times 200, that's $500 in coax alone there, right? So keep that in mind, kind of on there. Now, the other aspect of it is repeater equipment is expensive. Some repeaters can be up to $10,000 or more. Other repeaters are around a couple $1,000s. Once again, you have two radios doing a specific task and function on there. But what really bends my antenna of all this is that you have people who complain about repeaters, or the repeater doesn't do what they want, so they go away from the repeater, and then they say there's no solution. There is a solution. It's repeaters. Repeaters are a great infrastructure, and that's what they are. Is they are an infrastructure. You can have multiple repeaters feed multiple areas, or you can have one repeater up on a great top high site that can go ahead and transmit everywhere. Guess what? It works either way. It works either way on there. But the nice thing about it with a repeater is a repeater doesn't require other infrastructure to do it. It doesn't require the internet. It doesn't require things to do it. Now, if you want to have a linked repeater, if you want to have something like that, yeah, then that's going to maybe require some other radios on there, maybe the internet, that kind of thing like that on there. But in essence, a repeater is just a standalone device that hears a signal, increases its wattage, and transmits it out on another frequency, and it's nice, and it's convenient, and people use it. Some people, they only do it for Skywarn, but that's the other thing on there too, is that if we don't know about it, folks, if we don't market it, we're not going to know about it. I've had numerous people that have gone ahead and they haven't really marketed a repeater. No one knows about it. And guess what? They're okay with that. They're like, yeah, okay. But then there's other people that are like, whoa, no one uses my repeater. Well, have you told people you can use it? People will put up repeaters for like emergency services or Skywarn or some sort of special event. And if you say, hey, this is a Skywarn repeater, people start to think that it's like, oh, well, maybe I can only use it for Skywarn. It's only used for that. It's not for other purposes. No, that's not the case at all. From a person who has numerous repeaters, commercially and amateur radio-wise, commercial users are going to use the repeater. They're going to do that. But even some people want to go away from repeaters and use connection devices like POC stuff. Well, guess what? I don't know. There's something to say about having a radio in your hand that is not connected to public accessible infrastructure. There is. There's just something about that. So overall, what really bends my antenna is that people are either uneducated about repeaters or don't want to use repeaters, but then you can't complain about the repeaters. Get the education. Obviously, this channel offers education. Or go ahead and start asking about the repeaters. Don't be afraid to talk about repeaters. Now, your repeater trustees, your repeater owners, if you have a repeater and it's available for commercial purposes, GMRS, amateur, whatever, market your repeater. Make yourself contactable, right? Make it so, hey, you got a question about this repeater, go to here. In this day and age, if you can't receive a text message or even a social media message or an email or something like that for something, man, you got some problems, man, because, man, there's so many different ways to be contacted. It's not like it was back in the day. I could see that. You know, you only had a letter writing campaign or telephones. I totally get that. But that's what really bends my antenna. Get out there and use those repeaters and everything like that on there. So I'm looking at the clock on the wall here in the studio, and guess what? It's 30 minutes and more on there. Thanks for tuning in to the show. Thanks for being back. We're not going to do a show next week. We're going to be down at Hamvention. No, we're not going to be doing any videos of like, hey, guess to find out that I got at Hamvention. No, we're not going to do any of that. We do have some interesting stuff coming up here, some more technology items. You know, we'll work on one for duplex. We'll work on one for some more expanded repeater stuff and everything like that on there. So stay tuned to the channel here. We want to do educational. And as always, you got a question on here, shoot us a message. Put it in the comments section on YouTube. If you're on social media, put in a social media message on there, something like that, and go from there. Until then, everybody, take care, stay safe, and I'm going to talk to you on the radio sometimes.